All right, so we're here to talk about a new idea of mine, and I'm going to share a few slides with you, and I promise not to speak too long, but really basically I asked a few people, just a few people I like and trust, to join the meeting to talk about an idea that I have. And what I'd ask everybody on the call to do is to treat it as confidential and proprietary, if that's okay with everybody. Everybody's kind of nodding. Elvia, I assume you're nodding. I think Elvia is at work, so she probably can't turn on her camera or her microphone. But I don't ask people to sign NDAs, and I think some of you know why. I don't really believe in non-disclosure agreements. If you have somebody that you like and trust, you can ask them to keep things confidential, and they'll do that. If you have somebody you don't like and don't trust, you could get them to sign 10 NDAs. They have no intention of living up to their signature. So at least in my experience, NDAs are not that useful. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving anybody legal advice, but that's been my experience. Okay. So enough of that. So I'm going to share the slides with you. It's kind of an idea that's been running around in my head for a while. And like I said, I really wanted you guys to see what I have in mind, and then maybe give me some advice as to where we go with it next. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to put you guys here. All right, put you at the bottom. So I'm going to start back in 1956. And there's nobody on this call that was born then other than yours truly. And you can see pictures. I actually had hair, just people don't believe it, but you can see pictures of me on the screen there. The one on the left, I think I was 5 or 6, and the one on the right, I was 15. And there's been this image in my mind for a long time, since the 1950s, when I was a little boy. Every year, my parents would take me down to Hyannis port in Cape Cod, which is south of Boston. And we would spend a couple of weeks there. And not far from where we were staying, there was a tent called the Melody Tent. And in the Melody Tent, you could watch wonderful actors and actresses actually escaping from New York City. Because you got to remember, back then, air conditioning was not as common as it is now, so that buildings in New York City, those big, tall concrete structures, concrete and steel structures, they would heat up to 105 degrees Fahrenheit or sometimes a little bit warmer. So the rich dudes in New York would go to Cape Cod and spend their summers there. And it meant you had these wonderful actors and actresses who would come to Cape Cod for the summer, and then they would perform in something called the Melody Tent, which you'll see a picture of in a couple of minutes. And when I was a little boy, my parents would take me there, and I remember watching Peter Pan, and Captain Hook in one of the intermissions came into the audience and chased all the kids around. So that's why Captain Hook is on the screen there. But this idea of the Melody Tent has been in my mind for a long time. That's part one. Part two is we've got on the call, I think everybody knows, or most of you guys know, Simon. Simon, wave hi. And you can see that Simon is not a real person. He's a sim. Right? If you look at his name, it's my kids used to play The Sims. So we got Simon here, and we've got Patrick. Patrick, wave hello.
Hello.
And Simon and Patrick run a company which I coach called Humble Creek, and they have designed, I think, one of the best tiny homes that I've seen anywhere. And I've done quite a bit of work with tiny homes, not just with Humble Creek, but with a couple of providers in the States and a few others in Canada as well. But this design of the Noble is fantastic, in my opinion. You can see that it doesn't have a shed roof. It has a pitched roof. That's up here, if you can see my cursor moving around. And on the right-hand side of my screen is their floor plan. And you can see on the ground floor, if you will, there's a master bedroom, a cheater ensuite, a galley kitchen, an entertainment area with a sofa bed, some counter space where you can have something to eat and also maybe do some work. And then you have, I think they're called cubby stairs, which go to the loft, which you can see here. And because of the Ontario Building Code, Simon explained to me that the loft is identified simply as storage, but in actual fact, it could be another bedroom. And if you look at the elevation up here, there is a window that I guess there are 2 windows that bring daylight to the loft. So in theory, you could have a couple sleep here. You could have an individual on the sofa bed pull out here, and you could probably sleep 2 more people upstairs, probably kids or young people anyway. So it could sleep anywhere from 2 to 7 people in the Noble. It's a beautiful design that the boys have worked on. All right, so what does the Melody tent and the Noble have to do one with the other? Here's this is what Simon did. He helped me with some of the graphics. And what I'm thinking of, this is kind of the idea, and I want your feedback on it, good or bad, hopefully good. But what I'm thinking is something like the Melody tent. We can't call it the Melody tent because that's been around for a century. So I'm going to call it for now anyway, Melody Place. We could put these next to arenas and stadiums in probably 4 or 5 countries. Obviously, the United States and in Canada, Germany, the UK, and Australia. Those would be, I think, the biggest markets. The Australians are, I lived in Australia for many years. The Australians are crazy about entertainment and sports. The Americans, every bit as crazy about sports as the Aussies. The Germans and the Brits, obviously, we've got a Brit on the online here. And Michael, you're going to agree with me. The Brits are just as crazy about sports as the Aussies.
Dark raving lunatics, Bruce. Yeah.
Yeah, raving lunatics, exactly. So I think there is a real estate play here and an entertainment company all wrapped in one. That's at least the theory. And so, you put up a huge tent next to the Canadian Tire Center or next to the Miami Grand Prix or wherever it is, and you put a bunch of these tiny homes inside. And what would you use it for? Well, you'll see that in a minute. This is just some of the stuff that we're fooling around with. And again, Simon helped me with the graphics. That you'd have, it looks kind of like a wagon train. You'd have a bunch of these noble tiny homes inside the Melody tent, and you'd have lots of fun things to do there. And I think, it has some appeal. This was just my original sketching, and Simon obviously took my sketches. I'm a civil engineer, not an architect, and certainly not a graphic artist, and this was the best I could do. But these are sort of the concepts that have been in my mind for a while anyway. So what would the uses be? I mean, so the idea is that you could come to the Melody tent, right, with anywhere from, 10 or 12 to 15 tiny homes in it, sleeping, maybe up to 70 people. And you could do bachelor parties there, bachelorette parties, corporate team building, sales meeting, mini concerts, supplier and customer rewards. I mean, there's an infinite number of uses, but the whole thing would, at least in my mind, would be rented to one group. It wouldn't be, 15 different sales. It'd be one group, and they could, rent this thing. And you go to the event, you're going to a Taylor Swift concert, you're having your bachelorette party, you go there, guess you drink as much as you want. If you're in Canada, you can smoke, or at least in Ontario, you can smoke as much weed as you want. Go to the concert, and then you don't have to drive home. You just go out to the parking lot, and there's the Melody tent, and that's where you can crash for the night. So it's yours for probably close to 24 hours. And like I said, to me, it makes most sense in the United States, Canada, Germany, UK, and Australia. And there are some fantastic stadiums and arenas. The new Los Angeles Stadium is probably the most expensive in the world, or at least one of the most expensive in the world, and it's beyond belief. I think this is where Chris O'Connell. This is where the F1 is in Miami.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Dolphin Stadium.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Canadian Tire Center here in Ottawa. And then, Michael, you would know where Arsenal plays in London.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Finsbury Road.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing I was thinking of, and again, this is just me, spitballing things. Okay. So, if I'm doing a good job, that's great. And if I'm not, well, you'll tell me, I'm sure. So what I was thinking is we might form a new real estate and entertainment company. Maybe it'd be called Melody Place Inc. or something, whatever is possible. And I think what I have in mind is that shareholders in this company would actually own these tiny homes in their own names. Because one of the things that I think a lot of shareholders, me included, don't really want is just more shares in another company. How about more shares in this company, which is point number 2 here, but also owning 1 or 2, or for that matter, 5 or 10 or 50 tiny homes in your own name with some income that is attributable to you personally directly. So you're not just dependent on the company for income. And I think that is kind of appealing, because I see a lot of people, especially today in what is close to a recession, people are a little bit reluctant to get involved in new things. And then I came up with the idea for a wedge product. And I don't know, Simon and Patrick, if I've told you what it is, but a wedge product is something that I counsel. I coach over 2,500 people, and I often talk about, doing something that's like a test case, as opposed to spending a couple of $1 million on your first one. What if we had a wedge product, something that got you in the door? I think somebody told me, the foot in the door thing. And, wedges are really important for things like splitting firewood or for breaking sea ice, right? But they're also important in business. So what I was thinking is, tomorrow I'm meeting with Cyril Leader. He is the president and CEO of the Ottawa Senators, working now for the new owner there, Michael Andlauer. And what I'm thinking of doing is, I'll tell Cyril what the vision is, because, he and I have worked together for more than 35 years. But I'm also going to say to him that maybe what we would do is we would try it out with just 4 parking spots, just 4, tiny homes in the parking lot, with some landscaping around it to make it look pretty and nice. But to try something that, whether it's, working with the Sens or working somewhere in Florida, to try something at a smaller level as a wedge product to see exactly how it will be received. Do people really want to stay in tiny homes next to stadiums and party? I think they do, but maybe we could find out without spending a whole lot of money. If you have a wedge product like this and you have 4 tiny homes and it doesn't work, you go with your F-150, or maybe it's a 350, I don't know, you hook it up and you take it somewhere else, right? So you don't really have a lot of risk. And I did say that there might be a social purpose to this. More than 30 years ago, I started the Sens Foundation, and maybe we could create from our revenue stream a royalty for the Senators Foundation. So it would serve some sort of social purpose. And I actually went to the Canadian Tire Center, and I identified I'm going to tell Cyril tomorrow, or at least ask him tomorrow. It's close to the main entrance, but it's off to the side. So it's kind of halfway between the main entrance and the VIP entrance. Close to the Senators merchandise store. And I don't know if you can see it on here, but here's the Canadian Tire Center here. There's the Queensway, the Highway 417. And this is the VIP parking lot. I was going to ask Cyril if we could possibly rent 4 parking spaces here and try it out. So anyway, those are the pictures I took. Then what I did next was I worked on some numbers, right? Just for the test case. I haven't figured out what the Melody tent with 15 tiny homes in it would look like. It would be quite different, I think, quite a bit more probably. But I did 2 test cases. I did one test case where people pay $275 per person to stay. And that gave us a cap rate of about 17.9%. These are very much spitball numbers, but they're probably in the right ballpark. So, most of you guys know that cap rates or capitalization rates, if you bought say a townhouse in Toronto, would probably be around 3.5%. So 17.9% is pretty good. Even if interest rates are 7 or 8% today, or 9 or 10%, whatever they are, once you get to a cap rate of or ROI of 17 or 18%, then interest rates are still important, but they're less important than certainly if you bought a townhouse and you only had a 3.5% return, you'd be losing money every month. And then I ran a second case. I guess I call it case 1 and case 2, but it doesn't matter. I ran another case where I went much higher, and I priced it at $475 per person, per stay. And that gives you a cap rate that is ridiculously high, 54%. and a business just based on 4 tiny homes that could be worth $5.5 million. But you gotta say that these again are just spitball numbers, but it does show that there's potential here, I think. And just to give us a little bit of to see if it really kind of makes sense, I looked around, and I know, Michael, you did a little bit of research too. And this is the Cleveland Browns Stadium, First Energy Stadium in Cleveland, and they're doing something a little bit similar. You can rent this. It's kind of like a living room on wheels. It's not nearly as nice as what Patrick and Simon have designed and are producing, but you can rent this thing for $1,000 for 4 hours. So I figure, it's for entertainment. So, Cleveland gets pretty cold too. So if you're getting a little cold playing cornhole or whatever, you can go inside, warm up, and keep drinking, right? But there's no place to stay. It's only 4 hours, and it's obviously 4 hours before the game. The game is over, you have to go home. So the kind of use cases that I'm talking about would not really, but anyway, it requires $1,000 for 4 hours. So I didn't think my numbers were too far out. And in fact, certainly in Miami, where Chris is, if you had something like the Melody tent next to the F1, I mean, those people would spend, these companies
Oh
would
yes, it's crazy.
millions of dollars entertaining, doing sales presentations, rewarding customers, rewarding suppliers, rewarding employees, right? So, I mean, in a place like Miami, the numbers might be quite a bit bigger. But even if it's just $275, the cap rate of 17 or 18% on the test case was pretty good. Anyway, that's my presentation. So I did it in 20 minutes, Michael. Not bad, huh?
Very good. Very.
All right. So questions, comments, criticism, praise. I like praise.
Well, first of all, I love the idea. I think that I think that the Wedge product is a good way to get us in there. I much rather the cap rate on case 2, but case 1 is quite good as well. So what and if you can get this approved, Bruce, I mean, this would be amazing. So what's your idea, Bruce, about going forward? So this is the first time that we meet this team here.
Yeah.
We're not 100%. I'm not 100% sure what everybody does and how come everybody's involved in this meeting. So it'd be good to see what your vision is going forward on how it's going to go.
So Patrick, I wish I had everything worked out. I do not, and
That's okay.
I've been so busy lately. It's really actually quite stressful being as busy as I have been over the last few months. But the people who are on this call, Chris O'Connell's in Florida. He's a coaching client of mine. He's a real estate investor. He's a tech guy. Peter Hauderowicz is, also a real estate guy. He's a brilliant engineer, and not quite as young as Chris, but still youthful. Elvia is based in Toronto, and these are people I coach, including Alex Long, who's a very successful business owner. So what I wanted to do today, Patrick, was, I mean, you and Simon have heard a little bit about this. You've got a bit more information now, but I wanted, basically to hear from people I like, trust, and respect, Chris and Peter and Elvia and Alex, as well as Michael and Victoria and yourselves. I wanted to get feedback, and that will guide me. If you all think it's a harebrained idea, maybe I just park it, but I don't think it is. And like I said to you in the presentation I did, if we just parked 4 of your beautiful tiny homes at the Canadian Tire Center, and surrounded, what I have in my mind is surrounded by some kind of really nice, beautiful landscape, Christmas lighting and all that stuff, and some fun things to do, that would be a really interesting experiment, and very low cost and very low risk, I think.
I think there's going to be some solid traction on the concept. I mean, if you look at the States, the whole tailgate aspect,
Incredible.
It's big, right? So you're offering that, and teams and venues are also always trying to pitch the experience, right? So
Yeah.
you're looking to elevate that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you could just imagine what, you know, how much fun it would be. You know, I have 3 beautiful adult daughters. How much fun it would be for them to do their bachelorette parties, although it's too late for 2 of them. You know, in an environment like this, and you know, I just think it would be an amazing experience. And also, like I said earlier, too, it could be serve a social purpose, because almost every team, I don't know about the UK, Michael, but I think most teams and certainly most of the teams in Canada that I've been involved with, and the States, they do have some sort of charitable foundation associated with the team.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty much necessary for any club or stadium now, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think so. I think so. So, you know, I don't know. But I'd like to hear from Alex and from Elvia, if she can turn on her phone, and also Victoria and Peter. Vic,
I think it's a good.
Oh, sorry. Who's that? Oh, Alex. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just driving, but I think it's a good concept. You know, it's just a matter of getting your foot in the door to be allowed to park the vehicles or the, you know, the tiny homes in those areas. Because I believe that they'll work out for sure. I mean, there's so many people looking for, you know, like just the travel and commute to these places is a mission on its own.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you could create that experience where you could stay the night, you know, so many people will jump on board, I believe. It'll do really well, especially for main events and things like that, you know. But when you're talking like $275 a night per person,
Yeah.
like how many people could be accommodated in one of these like tiny homes, like 4 people or something?
So I did go through that on the presentation, but somebody is driving, so maybe he didn't pay attention.
Okay,
But
my bad.
No, I'm just teasing you, Alex. You know, I've known Alex since he was a kid, so I could tease him. So, Alex, you know, each noble will sleep from 2 to 7 people. So if it was a bunch of guys, probably 7. If it was a bunch of girls, probably 7. If it's a, you know, a mixed group, might be a little different, maybe just 2 couples. So anywhere, I think, reasonably from 4 to 7.
Okay. Yeah,
Chris.
that's good. And how much do the homes cost?
So I'll let Simon and Patrick. It's a moving target, by the way. Sometimes I hear them say $175,000 each, and sometimes I hear them say more. So I'll leave it to you guys to talk.
Simon, you want to do the honors?
Sure. So right now, currently factory direct, or us fabricating directly from our own facility in Dunrobin, we're pricing at 175,000. We are looking to possibly eventually get into a situation where we'll have maybe a distributor or a retail play. So that's where the price starts to vary. But like we all know, bulk orders, right? So if we get one for a full 10 to 15, or if we get a couple set up, then the more we set up, then the pricing starts to go down for all the units.
Yeah. Okay.
So Alex, I know you're a very good negotiator. So what we'll do is we'll appoint you the chief negotiator. You can beat up Patrick and Simon and get the price down.
Yeah, I would have to see more numbers on paper, but like I'm really interested to see how your meeting goes tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll give everybody an update.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be like really important. Like I said, getting the foot in the door. 'Cause as soon as you get the green light, you know, I think a lot of people will be interested in you know, potentially doing something like that.
I think so. In fact, Alex, I think you're right. Like one of the things that both Simon and Patrick have told me is that we have to be careful about keeping this confidential. Not that it'll be confidential for very long. I mean, you know, in the sports world, it's actually a small community. So if we did it at Canadian Tire Center, and maybe Chris, you and I can find a spot in Florida, because the floor is a lot warmer. You know, if we did like 2 of these, Alex, one in Ottawa and one in Florida, it won't be very long. I mean, the word will get around at light speed. I'm not kidding. So, you know, we'd want to have a footprint before the teams go, hey, this is a great idea. I'll do it myself.
That's yeah, exactly. You kind of want to be the first guys in and hold your ground. Because for sure people will jump on it.
Yeah, and I think my role in all of this, other than it kind of came out of my head since the 1950s, it's been rolling around. But my role, Alex, I think would be, because I know quite a few of the stadium and arena owners in Canada and the United States. I don't know anybody overseas, but certainly I know people in the States and in Canada, and I can talk to them. And the fact that I'm the founder of the Ottawa Senators probably does count for something, especially if we had a successful test case here in Ottawa and one in Florida. That's what I'm thinking. And, if we have 2 test cases that we can point to, one in the States and one in Canada, I think then we could probably grow the business fairly quickly. Sorry, Chris, did you want to comment?
Well, I was just going to ask, I mean, to that point, where do you think potential pushback from them could be? I'm not saying that
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Just from like
Early barriers.
Page on that.
Yeah, well, I think that listen, I mean, Cyril's a smart guy. Like, I hired him over 35 years ago. As soon as the words get out of my mouth and he sees the presentation, I trust him. But I think the major risk is that arena owners will say, "This is a great idea, thanks so much,"
and we'll just do it ourselves.
And just do it ourselves.
Like, and then just do it.
Now, having said that, I have to tell you that in my experience, because I ran the stadium and I ran a team, I think that would be a mistake, Chris and Alex. And I'll tell you why. When I ran the team, and I did have a chance to talk to Michael Andlauer, the new owner of the Sens, and I said that the team really only has a very few core competencies that they have to be very focused on. One, producing a great product on the ice or on the court or on the pitch, right? So they have to have a great hockey program or a football program or basketball program. They have to focus on that. That's number one. Number two, they have to have very close relationships with their key stakeholders, politicians, ticket holders, corporations, sponsors, right? So when I ran the team, I said there were, I think we had 4 core missions. Those are just 2 of the 4, but cleaning the arena, serving food and beverage, serving beer and hot dogs, all kinds of other, running the parking lots, all kinds of other things that you need to do. We would contract those out so that we could focus on our 4 core competencies. And that was what we did. And as a result, we had a pretty successful team in many ways. The team made the playoffs, I think, for like 13 or 14 years in a row. We were profitable, certainly in the early days before the Canadian dollar fell out of bed. And so I think it would be a mistake, because think about the Melody Place and the Tailgate Village. There's quite a lot involved in running something like this. That's why Michael is here on the call. He is I'll let him introduce himself in a minute, but he is a potential, general manager for this, at least in my opinion. And there's a lot involved, and it's a lot easier as an owner of a stadium or arena and a team to have somebody send you a check every month than have to worry about running another division.
That's a good point.
Said that, some of the owners will cheat, for sure.
Some of the owners what?
What?
What would you say? Some of the owners what, Bruce?
Some of the owners will cheat us. I mean, I won't mention any names, but there are a few mobsters involved in the business, and without mentioning any cities or names, they're connected, and so when you deal with them, you have to be very polite.
The only other barrier I could see is possibly property owners or event owners being really stingy with their prime real estate, the parking and their space up front for the vendors. That's where they might see a bit of competition.
Yeah, it's possible, but I think for example, the food and beverage providers will be providing the food and beverage for the Melody Place. Like, sure. We absolutely cannot do that ourselves, and nor would we want to, for exactly the reason I just said. I do not want to get into, and I never did want to get into the business of selling beer and selling hot dogs or better food than that. But no, you definitely don't want to do that. And if you did that, you wouldn't get a single contract, So you can't step on people's, but there are 7,000 parking spaces at the Canadian Tire Center. I think Cyril can find 4 that he could give us. you know, without disrupting their operations, and it will benefit them. Peter, did you want to comment?
I'm on mute. That's why
Yeah,
I'm
there
not.
you go.
You know, I like the idea. I'm kind of more conservative than trying these kinds of things, but everybody's looking for kind of an experience. And even, you know, my parents' place at Constance Bay,
Yeah.
or Constance Lake, they have the bison out there. And I was always thinking, instead of building something out there, why not drive something out there to try it out, see if you can have kind of a unique experience. But the idea of putting them in places like Palladium out here, or whatever it's called now, is really interesting. Because it like somebody mentioned, it adds to the experience factor of going to see, you know, not only, I mean, we think of hockey games, but there's tons of stuff, like tons of concerts that go on there. And for example, my daughter, she's 17, she went to Montreal to see a concert, and she went on her own. She had to rent an Airbnb, kind of find it
Yeah.
in the middle of Montreal, get to it, pretend she's 18 years old, but you know, Airbnbs are pretty lax that way. You can just sign up for your mom's name or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you had something like this where you can send your kid, it was fairly safe for them to do it. Yeah, I mean, it would take a lot of kind of crazy risk off parents like myself to do it.
I hadn't made that connection, Peter, but that is actually something that, if I could comment for a moment, is something that we did with the Canadian Tire Center. I established the policy, and it's in place today. We have zero tolerance, and I mean zero tolerance for misbehavior in the building or on the grounds. Zero tolerance. So if even if you're a season ticket holder or you're in a suite or whatever, if you start a fight, which does happen, 45-year-old men in suits are they get drunk and they start fights. It's ridiculous. If you do that, you lose your season tickets and you don't get a refund. You lose your suite and you don't get a refund. You're kicked out of the building for the rest of the year. You're allowed back the next year for a second chance. If you repeat an offender, you're banned for life, because it's very, very important, especially for women, to be able to go, and girls to be able to go to a stadium or an arena and feel that they are safe. This is important for everybody, but especially for the female portion. And I don't know if you know this, Peter, but at the arena level, in the Canadian Tire Center, there are 2 jail cells. And guess what?
Haven't been, so I don't know.
Well, I assume you would know, but they're painted pink. And the reason for that is it's shown that most of the people who end up incarcerated at the arena level in the Canadian Tire Center are men. I don't think we've ever had a woman there, at least not that I know of. And we painted ourselves pink because it tends to calm men down. They start to think about better things. But you're absolutely right. Security would be, if whether it's the test case or it's the Melody tent, security would be provided. I mean, there would be people at all ingresses and exits, and it would be overnight as well. You cannot leave this unattended. So that's part of the cost of doing business.
So a follow-up though, we don't have kind of a tailgate mentality, in at least in Ottawa. I mean, I've been to Buffalo and it's much different down there.
Totally different.
Our bylaw doesn't let us do nothing.
What are the rules about, you know, drinking in a parking lot? Because down there doesn't seem to be any rules, or maybe there are, but they allow you to put up a barbecue out of the back of your pickup and drink beers in the parking lot. I don't know how that's different in Canada, at least.
The last time I went to the Buffalo Bills home opener, Peter, a middle-aged woman came up to me. We're talking about 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And she was carrying an open bottle of rye up and down the street. And lots of police officers there, just waving hi at people, not hassling anybody. And she stops me for some reason. And she says to me, Sonny, you know, you can't drink all day. And I said to her, ma'am, I'm the designated driver. I'm here with my kids. They're doing the drinking. I'm the designated. No, she said, you didn't let me finish. Sonny, you can't drink all day unless you start in the morning. I thought it was pretty funny. So anyway, you know, to have it licensed will require, you know, obviously, you know, some kind of a barrier from entry and of minors, like your 17-year-old daughter. But having said that, the senators have applied for and been granted liquor permits for they have a tent up there, at least for the home opener. And then if they ever make the playoffs again, they'll have tents up there. So there is some tailgating that will go on, but tailgating in Ottawa is nothing like Buffalo. But maybe it's time that they did something better. And that's one of the things I'll mention to Cyril tomorrow when I talk to him, that our tailgating in Ottawa is pathetic. This is a way, you know, I mean, if it works, maybe you have 5 big tents there, and you have 50 of these friggin' or 60 of these, you know, tiny homes there, and you really start to see some Buffalo style tailgating going on.
Is it different because of our culture or different because of the bylaws?
Well, Alex, were you going to comment on the bylaw? Was that you?
It's the bylaw, man, because trust me, I have lots of friends that enjoy tailgating and hanging out, and the first person to interrupt your meeting and your get together is going to be the bylaw or the police, just to crash the party. You know, it's not that we don't enjoy that. Trust me, like, Canadians love to drink and party, you know, and it's shown at every event. It's just, you know, Montreal, they go all night long. Their bars are open later. It's more natural, and that's why a lot of people go down there to party. Because Canada is such Ottawa is such a dull city that it's well known, you know, like after midnight, like, what do you do?
Do you know what the unofficial motto is of Ottawa?
That the most
fun
boring
goes to
place
die.
in Canada.
No, the unofficial motto. I mean, there is an unofficial motto. The city would never, you know, publicize it, but the unofficial motto
That fun forgot.
The city that fun forgot.
That's right, you know, like, and it's true. Like, and a lot of people talk about it. Like, I have lots of friends that went to Montreal and moved to Toronto for that simple reason, you know, that, you know, after midnight, like, what do you do here? You know?
What you do is you go home and you watch Netflix.
Yeah, it's a really conservative city.
It's very, very, very boring. But we might be able to change that. But I would be more optimistic, Peter. You know, that it would be easier to you know, harness the tailgating mania in the United States and also in Australia. I don't know about the UK. I mean, is there a tailgating thing that happens in the UK, Michael?
Not to the extent that it happens over here. And usually the people that are hanging out tailgating, you probably don't want to be around, unfortunately. But I think the point seems to be from this is that each stadium, you know, wherever it is, whatever country, whatever state, whatever province, has its own culture. And what I quite like about the Wedge product is that there seems to be this basic setup which you can expand in any different direction, based on the melody pace kind of idea. So sure, maybe within Ottawa, it will look very different to, say, Buffalo or the UK. But I think it's a great idea to just start with that basis of just a few tiny homes with a feeling of something bringing it together, the landscape, the I don't know, the putting or whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Who have we not heard from yet? Chris, we're coming to you in a minute. Let's hear from Victoria.
I'd love to. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria. I'm located here in Ottawa, but I love the idea. I love the fun about it, and also echo what Michael's saying about you know, starting small and then seeing what the culture wants, and then being able to expand it just based on the location that you're at. I definitely have questions and thoughts that came to mind while you're giving the presentation, Bruce. Bruce, thinking about revolving stage, and I know that was something that was a really big deal with Melody Tent. And if you almost think about how to enhance the experience of some sort of VIP package, or you know, you want to make this exclusive to people so that they're coming in and they're going to feel like VIPs. Maybe there even could be a possibility for some type of performance, like a pre-show to happen that they could add on. And these are just, again, throwing ideas out there. Also on like nice days too. So one thing that stood out to me was on a nice day, is there going to be a possibility to open up flaps for the tent so that people can feel that indoor, outdoor, or is it going to be completely closed up the whole time?
So I think that's really important. Less, you could have an open-sided tent probably in Florida, and maybe not so much in Ottawa. Buffalo has tough winters too, but people Peter, you are an adventurer. Peter has done like a race across the northern face of Norway or something like that when it's 20 below. What's your experience with people, experience the outdoors when it's very cold?
Wow. It all depends. I have friends that have these little tiny homes out near Perth, and they use them all the time. Like, they're rented year round. So and these things don't take much to heat up. I have a buddy that has a cottage with like little bunkhouses, and you've got like a little, it's smaller than a 4-by-4 fireplace in there that heats up the thing. So your experience is the same, I think. Well, it's a different experience, but it certainly doesn't deter people from enjoying it in the winter.
Yeah, I like the outdoors too. I'm not as brave as Peter. I'm not going to do outdoor camping at -20, but I do like the outdoors, and it's very important to experience that. So I think that there can be some of this indoor outdoor thing, but it'll never be Hawaii. In Hawaii, sometimes you look up, you don't even know if you're inside a building or outside the building because it's so. You just don't know. If you're a weather forecaster, Victoria, in Honolulu, what you should do is you just wake up every morning with a blindfold, say sunny and 80, and then go back to bed.
Be nice.
360 days out of 365, you're going to be right. So you don't have to do any forecasting whatsoever, really, not much. So were there other questions or points you wanted to make, Victoria?
I did. So I'd also love the fact of almost this would be the founding location to test it, especially with your connection with the senators, and then the senators and the local aspect with Ottawa and the tiny homes with Humble Creek all resonating and starting in this location, and then the expansion. Another question that I had, and I'd love to, see the breakdown with the numbers from what kind of occupancy would we need? Not necessarily the how many per, but would it need to be 40% occupied? Would it, and maybe you said this, but I didn't catch it.
Yeah, no, I didn't go through it. Like, one of the things I don't do, Victoria, in a introductory meeting like this is, I got spreadsheets and spreadsheets. I to go through a spreadsheet is kind of boring, so I just summarized it. But I don't actually remember what I did on the occupancy. But I'm gonna check right now. What did I put in here? I don't even know.
Okay, I'm curious more.
I think that one of the things that we, Chris and I have been working a little bit on this as well, and we sort of think that you probably need a minimum of 60 events a year to make it worthwhile. So in terms of occupancy, it's not like what Peter is saying, where you're using your tiny homes year round. If you have 60 events, you hope to sell out all 60 of them, right? But you're not, for 300 other days, you might have a few. Like, you could have a bachelorette party or a bachelor party in the Melody tent, even if there was no event on, but it wouldn't be as much fun, right? And so this is all about, experience and about making it fun. And, so I think that where we're at is we're probably looking at something like 60 events a year. And the other thing that I think Simon did a very good job of is when we get to the point where we have the Melody tent itself, we have a large tent, the opportunity for sponsorship is insane. Like the naming rights on this thing, even in a small market like Ottawa, I did the very first deal for naming rights with Mike Copeland from Corel. It was called the Corel Center back in the day. And he was paying, I think back then, $2.5 million a year. Today, for the Canadian Tire Center, Canadian Tire pays $4.5 million. But in a place like Miami or Los Angeles, the naming rights could be, $40 or $50 million a year. I mean, it's just off the charts. And so if you had the Melody Place or Melody Tent, whatever we call it, in front of one of those stadiums, and you put, I don't know, what's a big Formula One sponsor? What's the energy drink?
I was going to say
Red Bull.
Red Bull, yeah. You put, the Red Bull tent. I mean, or Red Bull Place right in front of the LA Stadium. I don't know what you'd get for sponsorship dollars, but it wouldn't be a few $100,000 a year. It'd probably be in the few million. And so you might end up, Victoria, with more money coming from sponsorship than renting your selling some food and beverage or renting.
No, that's a great point. It's I think it's really interesting.
Not in Ottawa. Ottawa, you might get a $500,000 a year number. Those signs that you see on the Canadian Tire Centre that face the Queensway, they're about $550,000 a year. So on the Melody Tent or Melody Place, if you had two of those big signs and you could see them from the Queensway, you'd probably get about $400,000 or $500,000 each per year. So you might make $1 million, just from that. But in LA and Miami or in London, and in Munich and in Melbourne and Sydney, the numbers would be much higher.
I love it.
Chris, did you want to comment? Because one of the things that Chris and O'Connell and I have been thinking of is that we should try and do 2 test cases. We should try and do 2 if we can. One in Ottawa for the reasons that you pointed out, Victoria, but the other in Florida. I'm not sure which is the best venue, but maybe you've got some ideas on that, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, it's going back to the amount of events, because I know we looked at, one interesting thought we had was college. Those stadiums are insane, and talk about a tailgate culture. I mean, that's what it's all about down there. But I just don't know if they would have the enough events on the actual calendar to make that worthwhile. So that's why I know we sort of pulled it back and started to look at those arenas as well. But, maybe that's just something we run the numbers on, because, for the stadiums, you could probably do really well for even just those home games they have.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'll share. Chris has done some work on that. Hang on a second, guys. I'll share my screen with you. So this is the work that Mr. O'Connell has done. The Canadian Tire Centre has about 60 events per year, and then there are a bunch of stadiums here. Maybe you could run us through them, Chris.
Yeah. So, Ben Hill Griffin is the University of Florida Stadium. I looked on their events calendar and filled in the blanks a little bit, but you're only talking 25, 35 events. Same with Doak S. Campbell. That's Florida State University's one. Still, massive places, but, the events, that one's a little bit better. Being in that panhandle of Florida, they get a little bit more action from Orlando.
Can I stop you there for a second, though, because you made a point just a moment earlier that the tailgate culture, especially for college sports, college football, is so incredible that Victoria, it might not matter how many events. It might, but it might not matter as much as we think it does, because if you put a Melody Place or Melody Tent next to the F1 stadium, and there was only one event a year there, and it was the F1, the amount of money that people spend at those events, for these are like corporations of unbelievable scale. It might be that one event a year is enough to justify something like this. I'm not sure about that. I could be wrong. But in college stadiums, even if there was only 20 or 25 events, Chris, if the numbers make sense, then it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And you're looking that, sort of jump down to Hard Rock. I know Gillette Stadium in Massachusetts would be actually, in a sense, amazing for this, because it's such a pain to get to. But Taylor Swift did like 3 nights or something like that. So to think about maybe capitalizing on 3 nights of that, you got World Cup, you have a lot of things going on.
And Chris, I think I'm right in saying that for college football especially, it's the alumni that drive the numbers, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
And with all due respect to Canadians, I'll tell you a stat that surprised me, and we'll come back to this in a minute. A few years ago now, one of my students was saying, he felt badly about, the Black experience in the United States, much of which is very difficult, as we know. But he was also saying, you know, they're economically disadvantaged. I said, whoa, wait. On the Black experience, I get that. On the economic disadvantage, I said, there are about the same number of Black people in the United States as there are all people in Canada, about 37, 38 million people. And the GDP of the Black economy in the United States is bigger than the GDP of Canada. So I mean, obviously there are poor Canadians and there are poor Black people. I get that, but you know, the economy in the United States is incredible, and even for the quote unquote the most disadvantaged section of the U.S. population, they still have a hell of a lot of money. Not all of them, but they have a hell of a lot more. They have more money than Canadians do. So we should stop, you know, looking down at anybody. What I'm saying is, when the alumni show up at a college game in the United States. I mean, these guys, every small town in the United States has at least one billionaire. It's incredible. So they spend money. Anyway, Chris, back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you really hit on the highlights there. You know, as you get down it, then you get into the arenas and then some of the mid-tier stadiums that are like, again, in Orlando that don't have maybe the same draw. But, you know, I think some of those larger, more popular actual stadiums, and then obviously your arenas there that have the space for it.
I think we should add Gillette Stadium to our list because you're a Patriots fan.
I agree, and that's always the pain. You got to take the train that either shows up a half an hour before the game, leaves half an hour after, so you're scrambling, or you're in a car with you're fighting to get even out of the stadium back to your car to even, you know, find the place. And they have such limited hotels there in the, you know, Foxborough, Massachusetts, out in the middle of nowhere. Could be very interesting.
Well, you know, I get a lot of criticism for putting the Canadian Tire Center out in Canada, in the west end of Ottawa. You know, I do. I mean, even now, I still get people who criticize me for that. And there were a lot of reasons behind it. I won't go into that. But, you know, for somebody from Orleans or from Gatineau, Quebec, or from the south end of Ottawa, maybe less from the south end of Ottawa, but for somebody from Orleans or Gatineau, it does take a while to get there. So I hadn't thought of that either. I mean, Peter mentioned the security issue. Now you're raising, you know, the time it takes to get to an arena. I think that's a very strong point too, in favor of what we're trying to do.
Definitely.
All right. So what I thought we'd do for the last 5 minutes here is we just introduce ourselves. We probably should have done it up front, but I tend to do it at the end. Michael, you just tell folks a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, hi guys, Michael Swatton. I'm from the UK. I've been here for about 7 years. I mainly actually work in the film and TV industry, from sort of from a production perspective, also as an actor. So I sort of go between different worlds within that, but I have a pretty good understanding of how to sort of run a production, and with all the sort of variables that are involved with different locations, different people, you know, even different cultures. I did some tour management over in Romania, which was good. So yeah, I mean, obviously Bruce came along and mentioned to me about the Melody Place idea. So, you know, right now I'm just sort of watching, listening, absorbing, and really intrigued to see how maybe this Wedge product could develop. And I think from things could really like push forward from there.
Yeah.
And in terms of my actual involvement in it, I think, you know, I would happily collaborate in whatever manner I can, because I think it's a cool idea, and obviously some great people on board.
Well, at least in my mind, Michael, having you, you know, the youthful energy and also the experience you had. I didn't know about the tour organization, but that's really important. The other thing that I really like the way Simon and Patrick at Humboldt work. Victoria does a little work with them as well. And I you know, those guys are, you know, there's 20 pounds of bullshit in a 10-pound bag. You know what I'm talking about? People who talk a big game, you know, all hat, no cattle. And then there's people like Simon and Patrick who are the opposite. So I think all the people on this call, I know this for a fact, all the people on this call are doers, not talkers. Victoria, just talk a little bit more about yourself, if you don't mind.
No, I would love to. Yeah, my name is Victoria. So I spent the past 18 years living in Nova Scotia, and then I was recently sent here for work. I'm in the military. I've got 22 years in, and I also am quite invested in the real estate investors community here. I run a women's meetup, so we average about 50 women every single month. And I'm also on the board of the Ottawa Investor Real Estate Organization, OREO, which is also another quite popular organization. We bring in almost 200 people per month. And yeah, I'm gearing up to retire very soon. So I've been able to start to ramp up more of my involvement as my transition will become full-time real estate investing. And I also own a boutique motel in Nova Scotia, which has really opened my eyes to the creativity of investing and not just focusing on multifamily. And so met Bruce, and of course met Simon and Patrick, and really just align very closely with values and what they want to do. And so I'm here for a good time and to support and collaborate. And it's been great to meet everybody. I do, because I am on the government's clock at 1. So
we got 2 more minutes. Chris,
quick,
that's good, Victoria. Chris, a quick introduction from you.
Yeah, just in tech sales. I met Bruce in Ottawa when I was living here, but now I'm down in Miami, actually doing the long yards model here, more so that I can get out of corporate America. But, you know, something like this too could help, you know, move that transition along. So glad to be here.
100%. Peter, if you don't mind, a quick intro from you, and then Alex, and then we're done, because Elvia's can't talk. She's at work.
Peter Hauderowicz. I guess started in this real estate stuff when I was, well, just out of university. I had a couple of triplexes, then I worked a little bit in high tech, but that didn't last. And then I owned pods moving and storage here in Ottawa and in Halifax, and we owned some of the warehouses eventually. And now I own just the spot, which is kind of a storage yard for commercial and retail.
And Peter is the only guy I know who has lived up to Tim Ferriss's dream, the 4-hour work week. He's such a good operator. It's incredible. He makes decent money and works 4 hours a week. All right, Alex, you're the last, and then we're going to say goodbye.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm the owner and operator of All Around Fencing. I've owned the company about 15 years and continuously growing. Heavily invested into real estate development as well. And on the side, currently have 2 storage companies, one being developed, the other one's actually operating and doing fairly well. And the name is Get Space. And always looking to scale and aggressive on new ideas and investments. So
that's fantastic.
Intriguing idea.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate everybody spending an hour with me. We're right on the time. I will meet with Cyril tomorrow, and I will update everybody by email.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good
Take
one.
care.